The Brewster F2A was an infamous American naval fighter design that saw service in the beginning of World War II, and in some cases, the later years of the war and after. Serving with a variety of operators such as the U.S. Navy, the Finnish Air Force, the Royal Air Force, and the Dutch Air Force, the Buffalo would see combat over Northern Europe and throughout the stretches of the Pacific. As this was a U.S. designed and produced aircraft, I will start off with each U.S. Navy variation, and then onto the foreign export versions based on that initial variant and a brief history behind it. Throughout the early 1930s, Brewster Aeronautical Corporation was known as a subcontractor for military aviation parts, such as floatplane floats and wing panels. However, with the hire of Chief Engineer Dayton Brown, the Long Island City, Queens-based firm embarked on it drawing up its own aircraft. The all-metal monoplane dive bomber, the XSBA-1, imagined in 1934, would bring Brewster credibility when it came to new aircraft designs. In 1935, the U.S. Navy released a requirements contract to eventually replace the Grumman F-3F biplane, which would enter service in 1936. Going up against Grumman's new advanced XF-4F-1 biplane and Seversky's monoplane XNF-1, an ableized variant of their P-35, Brewster brought in a state-of-the-art monoplane design to beat out the competition. Internally known as Model 139, Brewster submitted the design for a mid-wing monoplane with a hydraulically retractable landing gear and enclosed cockpit. With wings and tail surfaces elliptically shaped, the fuselage was composed of an oval cross-section under stress aluminum skin, and the control surfaces would be made of fabric. The cockpit included a canopy that was able to slide back. The rear of the cockpit was home to a radio direction finding antenna, or an RDF, and a life raft. For visibility underneath the aircraft, a multi-pane window was integrated into the design. The wing would deviate from the standard practice of separate wing panels. In this case, Brewster would incorporate a one-piece box beam structure. Powerplant options for the fighter would either be a Wright XR-1670-02 or Pratt & Whitney's XR-1535-92. Armament would consist of one single 30 caliber and one single 50 caliber Browning machine gun in the nose, and provisions for two more 50 calibers, one in each wing. For carrier operations, it would include a fully retractable arrestor hook. Brewster would begin production of the design, known as the XF2A-1, in March 1936, well in advance of the Navy signing the official contract for the prototype. With the Navy's permission, a new 950 horsepower Wright R1820-22 Cyclone engine was linked to a Hamilton standard prop. This would be installed instead of the other power plant options that were initially submitted. After its first flights in December 1937, it was found that the XF2A-1 needed to be re-streamlined and lacked in performance. With data gained by the full-scale wind tunnel tests at NACA, the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, later which would be NASA, changes were taken into consideration. With the engine cowl tweaked and a redesign of the carburetor and oil-air intakes, the modified XF2A-1 had a rate of climb of around 2,700 feet per minute and reached a top speed of 304 miles per hour at 16,000 feet, with a range of about 1,000 miles. The Navy would accept an Order 54 Brewster's plane in June 1938 with an upgraded Wright R1820-34 engine, now named the F2A-1. As the Navy moved forward with the order of the new F2A-1s, the production versions included many improvements and changes. The ventral belly windows were updated, enlarged, and now featured frame panels. Engine intakes were contoured, and the radio mast would move from the port side to the starboard side of the aircraft. As for the cockpit, a new windscreen and canopy helped headspace and visibility, along with a new telescopic gun sight. In November of 1939, the first F2A-1s were delivered to the U.S. Navy with a single 30 caliber and a single 50 caliber machine guns in the nose. It was soon apparent that the planes had issues with excessive carbon monoxide levels in the cockpit. There were a small number of gas vents on the cowling already, but these proved not to be effective enough, so a gas venting system was retrofitted just below the tailfin and upper rear fuselage sides. This critical system would be incorporated into the following F2A-1. In the spring of 1940, the Navy moved forward with equipping the optional wing-mounted Browning M2 50 caliber machine gun, bringing the total firepower to 3 50 calibers and one single 30 caliber machine gun. With this increase in weight due to the guns and ammunition, the landing gears of the F2As started experiencing problems and failures. Only 11 F2A-1s were accepted by the US Navy from the original 54 order, the remainder of which were being diverted to Finland. As the Second World War erupted in Europe in September 1939, the Finnish government reached out to the United States State Department requesting to purchase US-made combat aircraft. With the Soviet Union invading Finland in late November, kicking off the Winter War, the US made it clear that they were willing to help. Brewster diverted 43 F2A-1s from the US Navy, with one additional aircraft created from spare parts, to Finland. Now known as the export designation Model 239, this variant would receive several changes, starting with denavalization. Along with the removal of the tailhook, catapult equipment and life raft, an export-approved 950 horsepower Wright 1820G-5 Cyclone engine was installed. Gone was a telescopic gun sight. In its place, a primitive ring and bead sight. Additional cockpit modifications included a simplified RDF system behind the pilot. Armament consisted of the single 30 caliber and single 50 caliber Brownings in the nose cowling, with the two 50 caliber guns in the wings optioned in. 6 would reach Finland by the end of the Winter War in March of 1940. All of the Model 239s would be delivered before June 1941. The Finns made additional improvements, such as replacing the ring and bead sight for a reflector gun sight, as well as implementing an armored headrest and seatback. One interesting modification, worthy of note, was the removal of the plane's wheels for the installation of skis for the use of snow-covered airstrips. These, however, severely hindered the performance and were rarely used in combat. The Model 239 was assigned to No. 24 Squadron. 4 flights of 8 served with the Finns, with the remainder of which being held in reserve. I won't go into the specifics and the in-depth combat history of this model, but it was well documented that the Model 239 was an ace maker. Finnish pilots fared extremely well against the Soviets in the continuation war that started in June 1941. As Finland was aligned with Germany, Brewster was not able to provide parts as the United States was at war with Germany in December 1941. Maintenance soon began to become troublesome in 1942 and 1943. The Finns started making their own field modifications using captured Soviet aircraft engines and used plywood for the wings on repaired aircraft, with varied success. German-supplied fighters soon replaced the Model 239 for No. 24 Squadron. They were soon moved over to No. 26 Squadron. With the signing of the armistice of the continuation war with the Soviets in September 1944, a provision of this deal was for the Finns to drive out the rest of the Germans. Model 239s were responsible for several aerial kills against Luftwaffe in early 1945. The Model 239 would remain in training service for the Finns until 1948. Thanks for watching Part 1. Be sure to be on the lookout for Part 2 coming soon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.